All right, everyone, welcome back. Looking good, sounding good. All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about weather. We recently had a hurricane off the coast of the U.S., off the east coast of the United States, Hurricane Erin. Thankfully, it didn't actually take landfall. It caused some high surf, some flooding, yes, but it could have been much worse. Now, let's talk about the Air Force. Talking about hurricanes, let's talk about the Air Force. The Air Force has a weather mission. And a side note, it is the 20-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which hit New Orleans very, very hard. And it was one of the worst, most damaging, most loss of lives in any hurricane that we've had in the U.S. Just so you're aware, the Air Force does have a weather mission. So being a space guy, I'll start talking about the weather mission by talking about the weather satellites. So the classic military weather satellite that the Air Force has is DMSP, which stands for the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program. That has been around for a very, very long time. It has a polar orbit, meaning obviously that it orbits around the poles, North Pole, South Pole, North Pole, South Pole. And so while that's happening, the Earth is turning, so it can get the poles and it can also get the rest of the Earth. The other satellites that are used by NASA are what I like to refer to, I don't know if anybody else does, but GOES and POES. GOES is geostationary satellite for weather, and POES is a polar satellite for weather that NASA uses. But we also have weather aircraft that can fly into hurricanes and get critical weather data. And that's what the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron out of Biloxi, Mississippi, Keesler Air Force Base did here this past week. They flew into the hurricane, right through it, into the eye of the hurricane, and then back out, releasing some sensors that are going to tell us a lot of information about the hurricane that we aren't actually able to get otherwise. So the aircraft that they flew into the hurricane is a WC-130J, Hurricane Hunter. And throughout their flight, they drop these things called dropsons. They are little like cylindrical things, looks like a cardboard tube that you might have like a poster in or something like that. But this cylindrical thing gets released throughout the various spots in the hurricane. And as it's flying through there or dropping through the air, it's going to get readings on wind speed, pressure, humidity, and rainfall. It's constantly relaying the information from the dropson back to the Hurricane Hunter aircraft until it hits the surface of the ocean, and then that's going to be the end of that thing's life. It's made to just drop and be done with. It's got a crew of, it's got two pilots. It's got a pilot and a co-pilot. If you want to do that job, you're going to want to get like a mobility type pilot, a heavy pilot. There will also be one weather officer who's in charge of that mission. So he or she can give guidance to the crew as well as the pilots on where to fly and get the mission, make sure the mission is a success. Besides the weather reconnaissance officer, which is a 15W AFSC, there is also going to be a weather loadmaster and a flight engineer to help execute the mission. And so with all those people together, you have a mission that can be accomplished because of teamwork. All those people working together can accomplish something that none of them alone could accomplish. That's the whole part of teamwork. That's the structure of the Air Force, and that's how we're able to go forth and execute the successful mission. So why do you guys think that the Air Force needs their own weather equipment, their own weather satellites, their own weather aircraft, their own weather radar, all that stuff? Why do you think the Air Force needs that? Can't we just rely on civilian companies to provide that? Well, in fact, most of the weather data that civilian companies use are from the government satellites. So it's kind of like that's really the main source is the government satellites. We have a bunch of weather satellites that are able to get data to like AccuWeather to provide that to them. But we really the military does need to have access to their own weather systems because they need to be able to set the quality of the data that they need. They need to have that data ready when they need it. How is this going to help us? Well, let's think about it. The Air Force, we do a lot of air operations. So air operations is one of the things you're going to need information on weather because you're going to want to know if there's possibly some turbulence, some storms. Overall, it's the main goal is to keep air operations safe. So that's one of the reasons we use weather that way. Additionally, the weather satellites provide support to Army ground troops to make sure that when we're doing ground operations in some part of the world that we have an accurate view of the weather because we don't want our tanks getting stuck in the mud and get hit with some pop-up storms, sandstorms, things like that. So that's another reason to do it. Other ways that weather is important to us is in not only air operations, ground operations, but also in space operations. We get a lot of weather from the sun, solar flares, corona mass ejections, and that can affect our satellites. So we really want to have a good picture of what's going on in the space environment as well. So that's really why we have weather our mission in the Air Force, is because we want to know what's going on in the kind of weather situation in space. We want to keep air operations safe and want to give us a competitive advantage for ground operations for the Army. And that brings us to what we did last week, which is where military aircraft help out with civilian emerging emergency weather situations, such as hurricanes. So now we can use our aircraft to fly into the hurricane to get crucial data, and that data is going to end up saving civilian lives. So it is actually a matter of national defense to have information on hurricanes, because if we can predict more reliably where they're going to go, we can save people's lives. And we use this aircraft to fly up through the hurricane to get data, is because that's data that the weather radar and the weather satellites that can't get for you. So it's up close and personal with the hurricane to get that data. So now if you are thinking about joining the Air Force, if you're an ROTC or something like that, consider being a weather officer. It's not a very big career field. If I remember right, you do need to have a weather type degree, or at least there's certain educational requirements you're going to need to have to be the officer of that. But if you're going to be the enlisted weather person, then you don't need to meet that requirement. Now, flying into a hurricane is not an easy thing. It's no joyride. It's going to have turbulence. There's going to be heavy rain. The visibility is going to be really low. Very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. But they fly through it, and they fly into the eye. And I have some, as you can see here, I have some video of the eye of the hurricane. So what do you guys think? Does that sound like fun? You guys want to fly through a hurricane? I think it sounds exciting. A little bit scary, but it could be a pretty fun job to do, fun mission. So definitely research that some more. Look online. There's plenty of YouTube videos on weather officers, weather operations, and look into that as a possible career field. I think it would be a really, really fun career field. I never got into it. If I would have known it existed prior, I would have maybe looked into it. I definitely wish I would have explored different job opportunities in the Air Force before I joined. But all right, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and have a great day and rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.